Well, for more on the US president's first month in office, I'm joined by Steve Pruitt. He's managing partner for Watts Partners and former staff director of the Committee on the Budget of the United States House of Representatives. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Steve, the other day, President Trump said he inherited a mess. What exactly did Trump inherit economically?
Well, economically, I think he accepted a very good economy. I mean, we've had 82 months of job growth. We've got the lowest unemployment rate. As you noted earlier, the stock market is all the rage right now. I think he's confusing, or maybe he's allowing us to confuse the difference between economics and politics here, in that once he actually starts proposing some legislation and we start to see what has happened of 8 years in Congress, as he's gridlock again, and that's going to cause some economic problems.
And speaking of some of that gridlock, your expertise is in Capitol Hill and legislating. Now, we know that Trump has this big infrastructure plan. He also has his big tax reforms. How hard do you think it will be to get those issues through Congress?
Well, it's going to take more work than we've seen in the first 30 days. And it's going to take more sophisticated work than we've seen in the first 30 days. I think he's on a very steep learning curve. The people around him are on a steep learning curve. Unfortunately, his inner circle is not experienced in governing. So they're really doing a very quick job of learning on the job here. And that's going to cause them some problems as we continue into the next 30 days and through the first 100-day calendar. But it's going to be possible to move some of those things. I think infrastructure is probably the most likely that will get first and favorable consideration. Tax reform has a good deal of support on the Hill. It's just going to be the specifics that are going to matter.
So then from an economic perspective, what do you think have been the most promising and most damaging of his actions so far?
Well, I think a lot of the deregulation that he is wiping out with executive orders, or attempting to wipe out now, people will be concerned about those issues going forward. I think what we have seen in terms of trade is going to be problematic in terms of now we got to negotiate agreements, and it's kind of hard to have faith that we're dealing with people who can negotiate good trade agreements based on what we've seen so far.
Now, we mentioned Wall Street. We know that we have a pro-business president, and as we mentioned, who wants to scale back regulation. And we've seen record highs, as we mentioned, from Wall Street, but without really concrete details of his plan. A lot of this is riding on optimism. So how long can this last?
Well, I'm not convinced that it is going to last very long, quite frankly. I think at some point the rubber has to meet the road here. We've got to see some real proposals. They've been promised to us on healthcare reform, for example, in 2 weeks. The tax package will probably come sometime as well in March. Infrastructure rumors are that it's not likely until May or June even, because of some concerns about how to pay for it. So it's not going to last that long.
So in terms of the things that Trump has really focused on in this first month, what can you make out his top 3 priorities, let's say?
Well, obviously deregulation has been his major thrust with all of the many executive orders that he's presented. I think the whole push on trade really has missed the mark in many respects. Even though we've pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Agreement, we've said we want to renegotiate NAFTA. If you can't hold a meeting with the partners of NAFTA, primarily the Mexicans, who you say are the real problem in the discussion, that doesn't bode well. But I think those 2 areas are probably the largest, and I think the third will be just the lack of specifics around some of the other issues, and obviously immigration has been an issue that we've got to do better with.
And as we look at trade, how the Trump presidency standing when it comes to global trade?
Well, I think it leaves a big question mark to the rest of the world. I have said in circles that people have to understand this president is a transactional president. He's not a politician. So he's looking at trade agreements, trade activity in a very different point of view than historically we've had to. And I think, in all fairness, I think more people are going to end up where he is in terms of trying to get the best deal we can get now than those who will sit back and be concerned about whether and how this affects diplomacy.
Well, it's certainly quite the shakeup. We'll have to leave it there, unfortunately. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Steve Pruitt, Managing Partner for Watts Partners and former Staff Director of the Committee on the Budget of the United States House of Representatives.